Hello and welcome to, we're now in the 5th week of Walking the Ways of the Summer Light, and I am Carolyn Cushing, here with...
Hi, I'm Yasbel Fernandez.
And I am coming to you from Western Massachusetts, the place of the Connecticut River. The native people where I live are the Nonotuck, and I'm thinking about the Wampanoag also because Massachusetts means place of the low foothills. Yesterday, I got to walk along the river and the foothills. And like starting pilgrimage is about traveling, but also like the place we start from. So it just spontaneously came to me to mention that. And Yasbel and I didn't even talk about that intro. So.
Well, since you're saying where you're from, I am from the island of Manhattan, where the people of the Lenape were. And the river that runs by here is the Hudson.
Yeah, rivers, they're kind of always on a pilgrimage, or they show us. They're coming their source, they're going to the ocean, they're always traveling. So this is our week of pilgrimage, and I'm going to place this year in context and what we're doing in a little bit of context, because we just had the new moon, and now we are starting pilgrimage week with picking our question. We did our work of gathering questions with the Wisdom Wanderers today, or whenever you can in the weekend. We're picking a question to focus on. I'll talk a little bit more about pilgrimage, but in Walking the Ways of the Summer Light, the thing about pilgrimage is that we have a question we're finding an answer to. And we are traveling. We're going to be doing this for 2 weeks. The emails that come this week are going to introduce you to the stages of pilgrimage. It's not necessarily like you would do every stage every day. It's a little bit more setting up information so that you can plan to do your pilgrimage this weekend or maybe next week, because we are continuing. Next week's kind of an open week, an integration week. There's not new content. We'll remind you of the current content. And we are moving toward our ending on July 5th, which is happening on the full moon. And the idea of full moon is we open up to receive a revelation. So opening up to receive that revelation about the answer to our question. So that's the framework we are in. And so that was our first point. Second point is, how do you pick this question? And Yasbel is gonna, so to remind us a little bit, like you've been gathering questions, where do you have them? How many do you have? And what's up with question gathering?
Today, I opened up my email and I had the email that said, choose your question. And I looked through my paper. So I printed out the journal pages. Oh, and every week I would write down the questions that occurred to me. And so far I have 19.
Oh, 19, the number of the sun. It's a perfect number.
Oh, I didn't think about that. So yes, I have 19, the number of the sun, and we're going towards the sun.
Yes.
So how do I know which one I should pick?
I
feel like I could get rid of some, but I don't know if I could bring it down to one.
Okay, well then right there, you just started on the process. And there are some, you look back and you're not as excited about them, so you put them aside, yeah. Right? Yeah. Like you see a few, like, okay, clearly do that.
Yeah.
Then there's a bunch of other ones. So there are some different options. I can't actually remember what was in the email. We're gonna do this live. So here's some options. I'll ask you questions. As we went through the weeks, was there an element that you felt, for whatever reason, it was like the element that was really speaking to you? You could say no, but...
I think the yarrow week was the one that spoke the most to me. Or water, air, the air week.
The air week, okay. Wait, was yarrow air? Yarrow was air.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're doing this as an example. You may need to go reflect a little more, but so let's keep going. So pick that air week and pull up those questions. How many are left?
So in air, I have 5 questions.
You have 5 questions. Was that your most questions in a week?
No,
No.
I had the most questions for fire.
Most questions for fire, but
Fire has 7.
Fire has 7. Okay. So you have 5 with air. And of those air questions, are there some that are like, they're not as important? That idea. Or are those 5 like all really important?
I mean, I already see 1. Well, I don't know. Yeah, I guess some of them are kind of like, they go together. I wrote about, so I don't remember what was happening during Air Week. I think that was at the beginning of the protest.
Yeah.
So I wrote, what is my place in the world? What am I grieving? How do I let go of despair? How do I internalize despair? What perception has to change so I am directed towards go instead of woe?
Whoa.
What is the middle ground for me? Yeah, so I guess I was feeling a little like chaotic. Actually, and I wrote transformational chaos.
Transformational chaos. Okay. So transformational chaos, like that came up. That's a theme. So
yeah,
you want to make sure that's part of your question.
I think I got that from the call that we had.
Mm-hmm. When we talked about as a group.
When we had the sharing group, yeah.
The other thing I hear in these questions, and you have mentioned before, the idea of like it's bringing things together, it's blending. And you have 2, what were the ones about despair? How do I
let go of despair, and how do I internalize despair?
So, your transformation and your focus on blending, maybe you sit a little bit with those questions and see if there's one question that goes together, comes out of that. And the question on pilgrimage, it can be kind of a multi-part question, because the idea of the pilgrimage is a longer journey. So, but you want to probably contemplate these different parts.
Yeah, so, I'm already thinking that maybe I could pick 4 questions. And then, like, once I'm there and I feel like the energy, then I'll know which one. Because for that week, I'm looking about these despair questions, and it has to do with the 9 of air. And I also had temperance that week, which happens to be my year card as well.
That's another good thing to consider, like a theme that is coming up all year. Did you experience in one of the weeks? What are the questions from that week? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, I guess there's no one way to do it.
There's no one way to do it. In fact, in the email, I gave a couple of different ones, and this we're being very, contemplative, figuring, going through what was important, you're kind of thinking about it. The other thing you can do, or anyone can do, is just kind of write the questions on scraps of paper, the 19 pieces of paper, and put them there, and just reach your hand in and pull out one.
Okay.
Kind of like you do with a tarot card, by chance.
Yeah, and also if you already have all of the questions in it, you could always pick them later.
Yeah, I mean,
throughout the year.
The email comes today, just because it's kind of where it is in the process. But you also may want to read up a little bit about the process and then, pick your question a little later. The other thing to think about, and maybe this is a little bit of a segue. Let me talk a little bit about pilgrimage, and then if I don't, then remind me of this question about the questions. Okay. So pilgrimage, we have been preparing by doing our wisdom wanders. We've been finding that call, what's calling us. Sometimes that call is mysterious, not totally heard, so it's like that question that you're not sure of yet. And then we start our first, and I should say, this is my favorite book on pilgrimage, maybe? I think so. The Art of Pilgrimage, Philip Cosino. And he has looked at a lot of different pilgrimage processes and pilgrimage from different traditions, different religions. And it's a book, and it's got different stages and draws upon a lot of different writers and wisdom. And I got it at the little free library down the street. It was just a free book that came to me, and it's become one of my favorite books that I work with. And so the stages, I am using the big picture from him. And so we prepare ourselves. That's what that's what we've been doing with the Wisdom Wanders. And then we pick a destination. Finding the question and the destination could be like a chicken and egg thing. Maybe they go back and forth. But the idea of like, where are you going to go? And if we were not in pandemic times, you might be planning, a trip to a sacred site, which, there are places of pilgrimage from Chartres Cathedral to Angkor Wat in Cambodia to southern Spain, to the mounds in Ohio or Machu Picchu in Peru. So these are places of different traditions that we know and share. And that is the idea of pilgrimage. There's some kind of communal aspect to it. I have done things that I think have ended up being pilgrimage to national parks in the United States, because that is a place people go and it's an honoring of nature. We're in pandemic times, so in the next few weeks, you're not going to go these places, I don't think. It's not what we should be doing. So, going locally to a favorite park that others visit, or that is perfectly fine. For walking the ways of the summer light, what's really important is the question that you decide to answer. But in getting the emails and thinking about what you want to do, I love to vision and plan, and I love to travel. So there is the possibility you're planning for when we can travel, that you're making a pilgrimage to a significant site. Then once you have your question, once you have your destination, you prepare yourself, you prepare for departure. There are, you prepare to leave behind things properly. So, the work calls and responsibilities won't come with you. You leave them behind, and you kind of then gather your things to be on your journey, whatever is needed in terms of physical things to make sure you can keep on your way, to inviting your allies. Like with our Wisdom Wanders, we've been talking about our way showers, our guides. And the final thing we're going to do on this call is Jadsbelt is going to talk about plant allies, because maybe you want to have a plant ally who you are asking to assist you on the pilgrimage. And so departure, you prepare, and it's intentional. And then you step over the thresholds and you travel. You go on the journey towards something, but the learning, the insight of pilgrimage can happen anywhere. You do have a destination. It's something called the center. And the center is usually the agreed upon spot of other pilgrims. But of course, the center can be the revelation that comes to you that can happen anywhere. And then once you go to the center and receive the revelation, then you have to return home. And sometimes challenges can happen on the return, because it's a little bit like you're being challenged and tested to really take back and prove yourself worthy, and build your muscles for then doing the work. Once you're changed, pilgrimage is a physical journey outwardly, but what we're really working on is our inner selves and inner change. So when you return, you are different, and you will do things differently. Maybe there is some gift that you were going to bring forth into the world from your pilgrimage trip. And the daily emails lay this out just to inspire. And when we get to our weekly sharing circle, we won't necessarily think everyone has done a pilgrimage, but we'll be talking about questions and where we are on the way. And then next week, as I said, is a little bit catch-up time. We'll remind you of some things you could be doing. And then our last Sunday, July 5th, we're going to have a session, a process to kind of answer our questions, maybe conditionally, and gratitude for all of us being on the way. So that's pilgrimage overview, daily emails. Also in the overview booklet, it's kind of laid out, so you can always find your way there. So now let's circle back to question. So when thinking about the question and like these are some of the phases, you were talking about like, well, maybe you travel with a few questions, and then at some point on the journey, you decide, oh, I realize it's this question that's going to come up. And or you're kind of where you go and the question you ask, it could be intertwined. Like, I'm just using this as an example, like you have a question about related to spirituality or your faith tradition. Well, then you want to, maybe you make sure that where you're going is related to your faith tradition, or the faith tradition of your ancestors. That's just the most obvious kind of example. But if you're working on nourishing the earth, or your connection to spirits aside from institutions, then maybe you go to the park down the street. That is where you're going to get that. That's there all the time. So those are some thoughts on questions. So what are you thinking now on your question and where you are with picking it?
So once I said I should just pick 4, then I thought I could pick one question that corresponds with one of the cards that I picked.
Interesting.
Because I was inspired to write the questions around like what was happening, the cards, and also like as I was walking around. So I could pick one of the cards for each of the weeks. And then once I go on the pilgrimage, then I could just pick the card and then I'll know that's my question.
Ooh, yes, that's interesting. And I'm riffing on that. It's like we have a question from each week. And then we are on the journey, or we arrive in the center and we pull a card and we see what element it's come from. And that's the question will be revealed. Yeah, that's
Exactly.
an interesting one.
Yeah.
I like that. And yeah, there is some, we have the 4 elements. We've been doing the 4 elements, and it's a little bit the idea of the pilgrimage is like where we integrate. So it's kind of the major arcana time. And it's where all the elements come together. So this idea of like walking with something of all the elements is beautifully aligned with that.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So should we talk about plant allies?
Let's talk about plant allies, because I may have a plant ally, but I'm not sure. So you want to do an overview and then you can coach me in thinking about plant ally.
So I've been thinking about who's going to be my plant ally. And at first I thought it would be rose because I made the flower essence. But I decided it's going to be mugwort because I've seen mugwort pretty much everywhere in New York City, like in the sidewalk, in all of the parks. And since the parks staff, park staff, I guess, they're like on quarantine, the grass has gotten really high, and so have the weeds, and mugwort is just everywhere. Even when I was picking my rose, actually, remember, she inspired me to go with a different set of roses.
She led you to a different color, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, so I think I'm going to go with mugwort. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ally myself with mugwort. So I really don't use mugwort because I feel like I don't like to drink it because I think it's too bitter. But it may be what I need right now. So I'm going to make mugwort my ally. And I think she was the one that called me because I was kind of like, no, I don't like you. You're too bitter. But I think that's what I need right now. So I'm going to not drink it, but make an oil of mugwort. That's one of the oils that you can anoint yourself with.
We were talking about anointing one week.
Yeah, and I think actually that could mean something for me, to just like anoint myself every day.
Mm.
That could be like a very magical way to like open up my intuitive abilities,
Mm.
because wort is known as a clairvoyant
Mm.
plant that helps with like lucid dreaming and things of that nature.
Mm.
So that's what I think I'm gonna do. So maybe even if I didn't make the oil right away, maybe I'll just buy some, or maybe I'll make, I don't know. But that's who I think is going to be my plant ally. And if you don't have one, just see like who lives near you,
Right.
who's calling you.
Before we move on from that, something you said that, oh, that you're making me think about like modifying things for being in pandemic, and though even though things are opening up, it's like it's no reason to be rushing out, you know, we are not clear what's happening. And
Mhm.
the idea of like your pilgrimage doesn't have to be a big journey. And like you were talking about, like, oh, maybe I'll get up and anoint myself every day. Like that would make just your day, like what you would do normally in your day, like a pilgrimage or the day of your pilgrimage. So I think that's an option for people to think about too, particularly as we're like a little bit modifying our idea of pilgrimage. Like your pilgrimage can be
Well,
in your house with new activities.
but you know, now that you mentioned that, I feel like we are on a pilgrimage.
Mm-hmm.
None of us have experienced this ever before.
Mm-hmm.
And we have no idea where it's going to lead.
Yeah.
And we're having like all of these like astrological events
Yeah.
happening all at once. So it is kind of like a pilgrimage that we're on, and we're all of us are on it collectively. It's just that we're experiencing it different.
Yeah. Every day is a pilgrimage. I mean,
It
and
is.
okay, the idea of your pilgrimage as a sacred site, like we are trying to make this difficult time sacred. And just I Black Lives Matter movement, I clicked, they said we have a new video, and they made this 10-minute video with this powerful song about power, and they showed the faces of African Americans who've been killed by state violence, the police, and it went on for 10 minutes. It went on for 10 minutes, but they were making that powerful and sacred, and calling us all to look at it. Which, how does this relate to pilgrimage? It's like what you were saying, like we are in a pilgrimage, even though it's like, you know, the usual form of, we have to make this unusual time our pilgrimage, and make it sacred and make it powerful.
Yeah. And also, I just thought of the idea that people make places sacred.
Yeah.
All of the places that you mentioned weren't always sacred. They became sacred because somebody anointed it that way. They said it was.
Yes, I love that. Yeah, and like going to our local parks, we are making them sacred there. We are bringing our sacred intent there, making them sacred, and finding recognizing the sacredness of the mugwort, a weed.
Exactly. And, you know, it just made me think, the way that we started this call when we were acknowledging the land that we're on, that's making the space sacred as well.
Mm-hmm.
We're like voicing what it was before.
Yeah. And the people who've come before, recognizing their sacredness and that we are connected. Okay, well, we got really big there. I'm gonna go back to finding the plant ally. For you are really in conversation with the plants. I am sometimes not as in conversation with the plants. I think, well, here, actually, let me ask a general question, then I'll go back to my example. So say someone has been going through things, but they don't really feel like, well, two ways. They don't really feel like they have a plant connection, or they have like so many, they're not sure which is special. Do you have any recommendations?
Pick one at random.
Pick one at random. Like,
yeah, I would say just pick it at random. It's kind of like when you shuffle a deck of cards, you trust that the right one is going to come out, and that's the one that you need. So if you're having trouble, kind of like when you said put all of the questions in a bag and pick one out, the same thing.
And just, you know, maybe walk in your yard, walk in your park, and just the first one you see, the one you see the most, pick that one.
Yeah, exactly. Like for me, like I'm used to practicing the art of noticing.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's new to you, then that's something that you can spend this week doing or next week. Just whenever you go outside, um, just make it your business to notice, even if only like the first 5 minutes when you walk outside, because I know like once you're out there, then you start thinking about other things, the mask and all of that.
Right.
So let's just notice for a few minutes. And also you could, while you're noticing, you could also practice breathing and then see what sticks out. It's kind of like the blur.
It's kind of like the blur. Just
Go outside and see what do I notice first? Oh, there's something, there's another thing.
You said something important too about mugwort, that it wasn't really what you were attracted to. And, the pilgrimage, or like some people equate it to like being on the hero's journey. That's the Joseph Campbell made popular. And like the hero usually gets a call that they don't want, or like, Obi-Wan Kenobi shows up for Luke Skywalker and he's like, oh, I can't do it. So like that teacher mentor shows up and you're like, oh, that's not for me. Or we were like mugwort, oh, I'm not sure, but then you've answered the call. You've answered the call.
Yeah, because she just keeps showing up.
And to circle back to the question, like, maybe your question relates to mugwort. I mean, like someone's question could be, how can I open to be an ally, to the allyship of mugwort? Or, that could be a fine question, particularly if you have a really strong reaction to a plan. And okay, I guess I think mine is mullein, just because I've seen there's this amazing mullein plant and I saw some the other day and I was kind of looking for it. And I like mullein. Of course, we did all start with dandelion too. So, and I did blow some wishes with a silver dandelion. And the common theme there is yellow. Something yellow. So I don't know, maybe I will go for a walk and then finally let them one. Or, maybe there is more than one. Like more than one question, maybe there's more than one ally.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, use this week to see if one of the plant allies speaks to you.
Oh, and maybe we jumped into this and I introduced the idea of like, who's going to travel with you. But what's your definition, or how do you think about plant ally? Probably different way to think about it.
I think about it like working with it. For example, I was like allied with nettles. So I like went out I was at a retreat and somebody said, let's go and harvest nettles. So I was like, what's nettles? So we went out and then I was stung by nettles. And then the sting was so strong that I was shocked. So I decided I'm going to work with nettles. And somebody had told me, work with nettles for a year. So I made nettle infusion 3 or 4 times every week for a whole year. And I drank that. And then I just felt like it integrated with me.
Interesting.
So that's kind of like how you start like working with nettles. And then like after that, then I started becoming more interested in herbalism.
Mm-hmm.
So I think nettles was I know it was the first plant that like really got me into wanting to learn more about herbs and to get like a bunch of books and start taking classes and learning more about it.
It's the door opener. So maybe what we choose here with our door opener.
Like one of the things also, I was on a Guy and Soul retreat, so that also was helpful. With the tarot deck, it was like it shows up. Yeah.
All right. I think our goal was always to make one a little shorter each week, but we always we get excited talking to each other and about these topics for you. So, but I think maybe that wraps it up for today. But it will be exciting on the Sunday call for those who can be there to talk about what's your question and your plant ally and any thinking about your destination or any reports of people who've gone out on what's been their pilgrimage. But there's no assumption that you're going to do that before the weekend. So you do have next week. So that's that. So I just looked in this book that I love so much. There was a concluding thing that I like, just a little, it's called he says, a traditional Irish farewell. I've never heard it before, but may the stars light your way and may you find the interior road. Go forward. So that's it. Travel well.
Bye.